Welcome to the Smith and Rowland Show. Let's join our host, Alan Smith and Jeff Rowland.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen and fans around the world. It's time for another thrilling episode of the Smith and Rowland Show. And now I would like to introduce to you the man who I constantly have to correct, Alan Smith.
This is me. This is the Smith and Rowland Show back in the day now. This is the new updated version called Smith and Rowland.
Updated version.
Back in the day, it was, if you read the funny papers, it was called Mutt and Jeff.
Mutt and Jeff. That's,
same.
Yeah, that would
same,
be right.
Same.
Same.
So I'm just call me Mutt. I'm just a regular old Mutt. And of course you're Jeff.
That's right.
But new improved version is Smith and Rowland. So here we are.
That's right. Yeah, that's
Here
right.
we are. Well, how's it going, Mr. Rowland?
Good. Hope all's well on the farm.
It is. I see you driving your truck there, and
driving the truck today.
we're going. And the shot looks pretty good. A little bit pixelated. The phone's constantly it pixelates it just a little bit. Not bad.
Yeah.
Because it has a movement of being in the truck, of course. But that's still not a problem. It doesn't. Actually, it kind of helps your looks just a little to pixelate.
I knew you was going to go there. I knew
that was just the obvious. I'm just making everybody aware of the obvious. That's all.
Amazing to me how that you find every opportunity to be critical. You remind me of other bullies that we were talking about.
That is so unfair because, you see, you've got me into the situation now. I cannot mention Trump's name. So it's got me in a bad spot.
Well,
I'm in a tight spot.
You're in a tight spot. That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
You and I it's amazing how people don't know it, but we tend to have a podcast in the morning because we get to talking and we're doing a podcast and we forget we're not recording.
That we're not, we're not pausing. And our off-the-air podcasts are probably our best. It's our best work.
It's our best work, and we will continue to say that is the truth, so that you know that we can do better than what you experience.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
But we were talking about, of course, the going topic today. We're talking about Trump and the Middle East and Biden and being replaced, the states convening again. What's that called? Not the convention
of states.
Of states. And so anyway, we've been talking about a lot of things this morning, as far as trying to see what's the topics of the day. And we kind of got going on Trump, his pluses, his minuses. And then we also discussed Christians not voting Christian. That was a pretty good little discussion we had. I wish everybody could have heard that one.
Absolutely. Well, let's rehash that one because that's a big one.
That is kind of, I won't remember what our highlights necessarily were, but
it speaks to the difference between democracy and a republic.
That's right.
And one of the key elements of the Democrat platform, or in their campaign rather, is that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. I would have a tendency to believe it's the other way around. I think Joe Biden's a threat to democracy. But the strength of a democracy is in the voice of the people. It's in a government of the people.
That's right.
That's the strength of democracy. But when you have people that are decent, that are rational thinkers, and that have the best interest of the nation in their heart, that crowd's not voting. They're staying gone. That's the silent majority they used to be called. But you get somebody that is pro LGBTQ rights, that is pro Palestinian, that is pro everything that is anti-American. Boy, they vote. Then people vote, and then you've got a group of Christians that profess to know Christ that won't vote Christian for whatever reason. I mean, and there's a multitude of reasons. Some don't vote Christian because their granddaddy voted for a particular political party that when he was coming up was Christian in their principles, but have changed.
Well, you know the magazine, National Review, Jeff, had an article here on democracy or republic, talking about what we're talking about here, saying that, the catchword today, if you'll notice all the politicians are using the word democracy when they're destroying our democracy, yada, yada, yada. But the word democracy is basically that the majority rules. And here's a definition in the dictionary: a system of government by the whole population or all the eligible members of a state, typically through elected representatives, that's governed by a democracy. It's control of an organization or group by the majority of its members. So a democracy, and we're saying, well, the vote, democracy is what our country is. Now, we're actually a republic, which includes a democracy.
Right.
In my understanding, republic includes a democracy, but a democracy does not include a republic.
Right.
Now, a republic is a state in which supreme power is held by the people and their elected representatives, and which has an elected or nominated president rather than a monarch. Now the idea here is, even in a republic, in a democracy, the minority doesn't have a voice.
Yeah.
But in a republic, the minority does have a voice, and that's the reason for your Bill of Rights. And it says that each individual has rights. In a democracy, you tend to lose individual rights as a minority. Well, the reason the United States is because of the protection of minorities.
That's exactly right.
That's the issue. Democracy is just the majority rules, and everybody says we're a democracy, and they're against racism, or they're against this or against that. And which what protects you in a republic is it protects the minority, has equal rights with the majority. In other words, you're not minimized as an individual just because the majority rules in the voting booth. So that's and since this stuff's not even taught in too many schools anymore, most people do not understand when they say, well, it's a threat to our democracy. I'm like, no, it's a threat to our republic. And somebody needs to start. And I understand when they use the word democracy. Democracy is included in republic because the majority does vote. But also, after the vote, the individual rights of a minority are just as protected. And that's, our forefathers had enough sense to know that. In this little article here, Jeff, the democracy or republic, it says the United States is a republic, not a democracy. This is one of those oft repeated expressions that one hears in civil discourse, whose meaning nevertheless remains somewhat fuzzy. After all, the word republic deriving from the Latin phrase res publica, or the people's concern, is what the republic means, a people's concern, suggests a measure of popular involvement in government, and the authors of the Constitution were radically Republican, at least for their age, believing that the only legitimate form of government was one in which public authority derived entirely from the people, but with the minority, of course, having equal rights. And Jeff, as an example, most people don't know who the first Republican president was. It was Abraham Lincoln. And back in that day, whoever came in second, I think the way it was the vice president. And so the vice president was a Democrat, and as soon as Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, he wanted to reintroduce slavery. So the Republican Party, everybody says that's conservative and one's liberal. Well, the Republican Party was founded off this country being a republic. The reason Abraham Lincoln was against slavery is because that was a minority that he thought was being discriminated against, which he was correct. That's the reason he called himself a Republican, because he was for the United States being a true republic where all men were created equal. And then comes in your Bill of Rights and, all of that. So in our Christian country here, it gives us a little bit of a problem, because as Christians, we're more of a theocracy. We're citizens of a kingdom, living in a republic. So what's your thoughts on that conflict of interest, so to speak?
Well, further that conflict of interest, Christians live in a theocracy in the kingdom of God. We live in a republic in America that is being ruled by democratic principles, by democracy. So you further the conflict. The truth of the matter is you're back to the same principle, in that in America, if you're a Christian, you are now, I believe this, others would disagree with it, and you may disagree with it, but I think that the Christian voice is a minority now in America. And we are a minority because most Christians have pulled out. They're saying this. Yeah,
Can I interject something? Let me interject something here. Where I would disagree with you is I still think that the United States is over 50% Christian. I agree with you is it's not doing as much good because they're not going to speak out and vote anyway.
Yeah, I say that the voice, the Christian voice is a minority.
I totally agree. And their lukewarm Christian, according to scriptures, Jeff, is the worst. That's not something to be proud of, but go ahead.
I don't know whether I agree that over 50% are Christian. I would say that probably over 50% say they're Christian. I don't know that I could go to the place of saying that 50% are Christian. I will say this. The Christian voice is not engaging in this democracy and in our republic the way that they should. And because they're not voting Christian principles and voting based off of their Christian principles, we're losing our democracy and we're losing our republic because of it. Because the very founding of who we were was off of the principles of the Word of God, and we have left those principles. We have yielded it over to the principles of academia that is now teaching a woke philosophy. And that philosophy is going into our political world. So what's coming out of the universities is now in the political world, and it's influencing the political world a whole lot more than what's coming out of the church is influencing the political world. And as a result of that, our democracy and our republic seems to be crumbling because that was not the foundation started out of the church. And if in fact you adhere to the principles of the kingdom of God, and that's the way you vote based off of those principles, you would have an America that would return back to its foundations. But we don't have that. So here's where we're at in this election. The campaign slogan for the Democrats is there is a threat to democracy, and his name is Donald Trump. I would say that the very opposite is true. And because of the satanic darkness that's in our country, the very opposite is always the case. If they say one thing, you can just about take it to the bank that the opposite is true. And I think that's where we're at, especially with this election between Trump and Joe Biden, if it remains Trump and Joe Biden. You and I had a conversation about some things that I think is happening maybe today, where there is some Democrat governors that is trying to kind of twist Biden's arm to step down. And we talked about some reformation to our government that might be healthy, though it may never happen, but it might be healthy if the governors formed some type and was acknowledged as some type of legislative body inside of the federal government. What would that look like? Because, and here's the reason we brought that up. With the Supreme Court's ruling on abortion, they sent abortion and the laws of abortion back down to the states. So now the states are in charge of the abortion issue. It's no longer a federal issue, though the Democrat Party's trying to make that a part of the federal issue. It's now a state issue. If, in fact, we go to the voting booth on the issue of abortion at the federal level, our voice is silenced, and it don't make any sense because that issue is no longer decided at the federal government. It's decided at the state level, which should make us engage in the state politics. And we talked about an interesting article that's somewhere on the KPS feeds, and I can't remember exactly which feed it is, but somewhere on our news feeds, there was an article written that all politics are now national. I mean, you both know that it used to be said that all politics were local. They're returning back to that local level because of laws like the abortion law that's now at a state level. So we need to be concerned about our state legislators, our governor, our lieutenant governor, based off of that abortion issue. It's no longer a federal issue. And that's kind of getting us back to a republic if we could take all of those issues and relegate it back down to a state level. But at that point, now you're pitting state against state. And what does that do? I was going to ask you this. What does that do in light of some prophetic words we've heard among the prophetic movement of a civil conflict coming to America? What would that look like, politically speaking, for one state to have these one set of laws regarding this issue and another state to have this set of laws regarding this issue? We know that that's already happening. But if you take a volatile issue like abortion, what if you took a volatile issue like LGBTQ rights and you handed that down to each state to govern? What would that look like?
Well, to start with, it's going to be a battle. It'll look like a civil war, as some have even said, such as Rick Joyner and others. So the truth is there's a civil war, Jeff, taking place now. It's kind of like the Cold War. It's a different type of war, but it's still a war just the same. There's a battle raging. There's a battle going on. And I think here's where Christians have problems. Some Christians approach war as something that they say, I abstain. That's okay if you're not on the front line. You can say, well, I'm going to sit at home and I'm going to abstain from the war. But the war still has what you call a front line. And that's where it has to be fought. And we're asking Christians to step up and come up to the front line, so to speak. But this war or civil war that you're referring to, and our constant call, you and I, is calling Christians, let's don't abstain here. You know, they're saying, well, I don't have any opinion. I'm not for Trump or I'm not for Biden, so I'm just going to sit at home. So to me, what that does, and you made the statement, that Christians are not voting their Christian principles. They're totally in a place of judgment of the man, and that for some reason some people just can't get past, he's not their cup of tea, so they can't get past the man. So where we lose is we do not have Christians coming out of the place of abstaining to walking up to the front lines and being vocal or having in other words, it's more Christian now to be able to go to church and you're not Democrat or Republican, you're not pro or con, you have a neutral opinion. You say, no, I'm not for abortion, but yet it's a neutral opinion, because if somebody stands for abortion like Biden, you wouldn't be about to say from the pulpit, I don't think we should vote for this man because of this heavy-handed. Of course, now you and I, on abortion, you and I now have even laxed not our conviction on abortion, but now since this has been handed down to the states, as you've said, the issue of abortion now is more or less on a statewide level. I like that a lot better, because I think the federal government is way too heavy-handed in dictating policy and law.
Absolutely, I do too.
And that's our problem. I think that needs to be done by the state. All of this federal stuff, to me, to come back on the state level, to me, would be much more manageable, and you would have more of what the people would like to see happen.
Absolutely.
But can I approach the people here just a minute? We, on a democracy or on a republic level, which we have a voting system, and so we're supposed to vote in representatives. The problem here is that when Israel got its way and the people voted, they always built a golden calf.
Absolutely.
I am for a republic. I am for a democracy. And let me say this. When they instituted more or less the Bill of Rights, which was around 4 or 5 years after the Constitution, they came up with this thing called the Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights and kind of solidified us being a republic. To me, the definition of republic is what makes us more Christian. Just the definition of democracy means Israel's ruling.
Yeah.
Republic means that you have individual rights. It has nothing to do with the majority. So you and I here are Christians, which looks like to be less than 50% of our country now. Looks like you and I are now in a place of being part of the minority.
Yeah.
But you and I are supposed to have rights that protect us, even though a majority rule might be ruling in another direction.
Yeah.
So what makes us more Christian is the fact that we are a republic.
Yeah.
Over being a democracy. And that's one of the hidden stealth reasons, I believe, that the word democracy, we're a democracy, he's destroying our democracy. Democracy is being used in such a way, and they should be saying republic, but the truth is, a republic, you can't use that term in the slanderous ways or using the term democracy. But I submit to you and to our listeners that us being a republic is the reason that we are as Christian as we are, because we do think about the disenfranchised, the minority, even though you have majority rule, so to speak, or majority wins on a vote. But as you've won in your vote, you can't trample over those that didn't win. And to me, that is a incredible reflection of true Christianity. Because in Christianity, Jeff, we're born again, but we're always for the minority. We're always for those that are in sin. So I just submit to you in this conversation that I think a republic is what assures and shows the huge reflection that we are a Christian nation over just being a democracy. And I said, democracy can't hold. It'll sooner or later, it's going to go into a total anarchy. That was my word. It'll go to total anarchy, and you'll be more of a communistic socialism to communism.
That's right.
And that's where one person rules, and the only one that me and you are for in a kingdom is the kingdom of Jesus Christ. But we have the other world kingdoms trying to form their own kingdoms. Now, a republic, to me, is the defense, it is the protector of the individual person in this country. We're saying, and the reason we're pro-life and not pro-abortion, because we consider we're so republic that we fight for the life of being individualistic of an unborn child.
Right.
Just as I am an individual and I have a Bill of Rights, we believe that an unborn child comes under the Bill of Rights.
In that, with what you just said there is no one running, Donald Trump, Joe Biden especially, Robert Kennedy Jr., none of them are as conservative on the issue of abortion as I am. Donald Trump wants to give exceptions for rape, incest, all of these things. Rape and incest, I understand, I get the trauma, but rape and incest should have nothing to do with abortion. That has something to do with a crime. It has something to do with a sin in the heart of man. But that child, that unborn baby, still should have rights regardless of how it was conceived. So they're not as strong on abortion as I am.
Right.
I'm making that point to say this. In looking across the spectrum, Joe Biden believes in abortion for any cause, for any reason, up until the point of birth. He denies that what the Virginia governor said, that Donald Trump pointed out, that the Democrat Virginia governor, before Glenn Youngkin, come out and said that he believes that when a baby is born, that they still can make a choice to abort the child, set the baby aside, and then the mother and the doctor decide whether or not they want the baby to live or not. That's just pure murder. That's pure evil. That's child sacrifice on any level. Now, Joe Biden says that he don't agree with that. Okay, great. But he still believes in abortion for any reason, for any cause. It's just the choice of the mother as to whether or not she wants to kill the baby or not at any time during the pregnancy. So I'm saying that you've got several perspectives on a single issue that's not even a federal issue anymore, and yet that's the number 2 issue that the Democrat Party is campaigning on for the White House. And what they're saying is they want to refederalize it. Biden has even said that he will go back to Roe versus Wade and try to get that passed. And he would do that through appointing judges.
The reason that that's important is, when does life begin, is because if you say it begins at conception, then our Bill of Rights protects that baby. You see, that's the reason that's such an issue of where does it begin? Let me say right here, Jeff, and we're getting ready to have to wind it down. Since we've talked about this ending up here on abortion, let's say this. Jeff and myself, just like anything else, believe that there's freedom. If you're a woman listening to us this morning, God forbid if you're a man that went through this, but if you're a woman listening to us this morning and you've had an abortion, we want you to understand that we're not trying to bring shame on you, or because we understand you were at a traumatic place, you made a decision, whatever. We've all in our life made bad decisions. So as Jeff and I are talking about this, we're not condemning an individual at all, because Jeff and I need more grace and mercy than you do. Trust me. We know each other. So it's right. Not at all a place of condemnation. But we're speaking to this day forward to anybody that's listening. And this day forward, when we're speaking in the lives of people that are listening, if you're contemplating an abortion, we would totally advise against it, because we are of the persuasion that doesn't just get rid of a problem to the individual, but you'll have even more problems after that. But it's nothing that all of us don't have problems, and it's nothing that the forgiveness of God doesn't reach in all of our lives. And as Jeff and I debate and talk about these issues, and we tend to be pretty vocal on them, we're just asking you to receive what we're saying. If you had an abortion, we're not condemning you. There's grace and mercy, forgiveness for all of us, and we can all be in the right standing of God, and we believe that there's no condemnation for those that are in Christ Jesus. But we do think that there's a way of escape, all of us, from all of our sin, and that's through the cross of Christ. I just wanted to throw that in there, Jeff. I felt like there was maybe somebody listening.
I would just add to that I have a whole lot more problem with someone that will stand legislatively for abortion than I do a woman that has had an abortion. It bothers me a whole lot more, because the ruling law of the land should not be child sacrifice. However,
and that's what we're speaking to.
Yeah, and that's what we're speaking to. And however, if someone has walked through that tragedy, there's mercy, there's grace, there's forgiveness, there's love, there is acceptance in Christ. All you got to do is just bring it to the cross. Provision's been made. So, yeah, but it does lead us into a political world where Christian principles should rule. And what I feel liberated about in some ways is, from a federal level, I no longer have to be a one-issue voter. I don't have to. Right. Because before, your hands are tied. You find out, it was real easy for me before. You find out who's for abortion, who's against it, and you vote for the one that's against it. You don't have any choice in the matter if you're going to reconcile your Christian faith to that aspect of your life. Now that's on a state level, it becomes that way in the state for me. But at the federal level, I can look at a broader scope. I can look at it in a broader way. And we're back to this thing, which maybe we'll do a podcast on it tomorrow. We talked about it before we started today. But we're back to this thing of, okay, where does that leave us with somebody like a Donald Trump? All right, are we going to vote personality, or are we going to vote policy? And that's the question. That's the overriding question. Many who are trapped by the fact that they don't like the guy's personality. I got to be honest with you. On this last surgery that I had a surgeon that was Greek, and I didn't understand a whole lot of what he said. He didn't smile a lot. He didn't have a whole lot of encouraging things to say, but he was a phenomenal surgeon. I would a whole lot rather had him operating on me than somebody that I really liked their personality but didn't know what they were doing. And that's kind of what I don't understand us turning our nation over to somebody that don't know what they're doing simply because his personality may be a little better than the guy that knows what he's doing. That's the thing that I'm trying to say.
Well, we have to admit, though, Jeff, it's hard to find well-rounded men like you and I on the Smith and Rowland show that has it all going for us.
Exactly. The total package, so to speak.
Total package,
I understand.
so to speak. But that's another podcast.
yeah, all of those cards and letters that comes in that says, "Hey Jeff, just go ahead and run for president." I just don't feel that's what the call
Not
of
the
God
time.
is on
Yeah,
my
it's
life.
not the time.
It's
Not the
wrong
time.
time. Wrong time.
Wrong time.
Yeah,
That's right.
things has got to get much more critical before I could ever throw my hat in the ring and be understood. You know what I mean?
Okay, stop it. All right, Roland. Be careful, buddy. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye.
Thank you for joining today's Smith and Rowland Show. You can check out our website at kingdompropheticsociety.org and our daily unplugged podcast at smithandrolandshow.podbean.com. You can also join us on Amazon, Apple, or Spotify.